Greetings, everyone. It is a pretty nice morning here in southeast Georgia. It was raining all last night, and it's going to be raining again tonight. So just be ready for that. At least my garden doesn't need to be watered, nor my grass, which is nice, and I hope y'all get the same treatment wherever y'all are at. But just be careful there out on the roads, especially if you are driving later at night. It's gonna be a little torrential, as it is this time of year. I'm doing pretty well. I got to call one of my good friends from the military. He's still in. He's doing recruiting duty right now. But I got to call him yesterday on my way home. He's doing well. Just, it always feels good to just reunite with old pals, even if it's just over the phone. Check up on him. He's checking up on me. It's great. So it's good to keep those connections going, especially how, in this age of social media, people are individualized more than ever. So it's crazy. But we should be starting the Marketplace Morning Report here in a second, as we usually do every morning. This is just the time of day I usually leave for work. So I hope y'all enjoy. Let's see what the story is today.
What businesses need.
From Marketplace, I'm Sabri Benishore, in for David Brancaccio. President Trump signaled the baseline import tax on goods from most countries could be higher than the 10% that's been in place the last few months, could be as high as 15 or 20%. He also threatened new tariffs against Canada starting next month. Marketplace's Nancy Marshall-Genzer has more.
Trump announced this latest tariff threat in a post on social media last night.
So dumb.
He said the U.S. would charge a 35% tax on imports from Canada starting August 1st.
More
but
hidden
Trump
sales
also
taxes.
said if Canada works with the U.S. to stop the flow of fentanyl, his administration might consider
make houses more expensive.
It appears there will be an exception for Canadian products that comply with the
That's all this is.
US-Mexico-Canada agreement, which was negotiated during Trump's first term, and Reuters is reporting that U.S. tariffs on Canadian energy and fertilizer will stay at 10%, although President Trump hasn't made a final decision on that. In the letter, Trump says he would add the amount of any retaliatory tariffs from Canada to the U.S. import tax. In his own social media post, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said Canada has made vital progress towards stopping fentanyl and is committed to working with the U.S. to save lives and protect.
Why are we letting one man make all these decisions? I thought the point of this was to be a democracy where the legislature, who we vote for, makes decisions, and the president's job is to execute those decisions, hence being the executive. And he just has a balance, a check on their balance of being like, no, this is a dumb law, this is a dumb rule, I veto it, and then a supermajority is required to pass it again. So, the dude got way too much power, which means whoever replaces him will also have too much power, but, if it's a wet paper bag Dem, they're not going to use that power whatsoever. So, and if they are going to use that power, it's going to be to do the same thing that this guy's doing. So, to crush working class people, to raise prices at the benefit of billionaires.
Lowest level we've seen in, let's say, 5 years since the pandemic.
More than 50% of people expect the economy to weaken over the next 6 months. More than 80% say they're in a worse financial position than
Sorry
they
if the
were
sun's
last
in y'all's
year.
eyes. I'm trying to block it a little bit.
CEO of Telsey Advisory Group.
It'll be in my eyes in a second.
Surrounding pricing given tariffs is top of mind.
Especially as more retailers warn that price increases are coming sometime this summer or early fall. Telsey says in many cases, they already have.
We do a weekly tracker of 80 items.
From jeans to sneakers to dolls.
We began to see this past week the beginnings of an uptick in price.
Companies
are
trying
going
to
on
be
the highway.
transparent about tariffs, says Diana Smith, who directs retail and e-commerce at Mintel. They're coming up with brand messaging and adding tax line items at checkout.
The we're all in it together type of approach is the best way forward for consumers and retailers.
Because everyone is a bit tense about tariffs, especially after years of inflation. I'm Kristen Schwab for Marketplace.
Yeah. I mean, that's honestly the best way for people, the sellers of things, Like, if they don't want to see their prices rise unnecessarily and make them less competitive and upset their consumer base, that's the best way to do it. You know, when Amazon chickened out on the tariff costs, the added tariff costs, like, they missed out on an amazing political tool that they have to, you know, pressure the Trump administration to stop this nonsense. So the more companies that do that, even small companies, if they're just upfront with it and they're like, yo, this is the added tariff cost, you know, that's a win, honestly, for the company. And it tells the consumer, like, hey, I know that this bullshit is going on, and I want you to know that this bullshit is going on, and to understand that it's not us who's causing the problem. It's, you know, it's the administration, and that's a smart political tactic, especially if you want to provide goods at reasonable prices.
Conservative as to purchases of equipment and more infrastructure.
Reiling says a lot of that hesitancy is because borrowers are uncertain about the economy. But a few of his commercial real estate borrowers are actually having trouble paying back their loans.
They might have lost a tenant, or something's happening. The interest rate on their loan went up from an adjustable standpoint, and now they're a bit stressed.
As a result, Reiling says the bank is being more careful about the new loans it makes.
Just a little bit more due diligence and maybe a little sharper pencil in terms of looking at deals.
That kind of caution is common at banks across the country. David Schiff with FTI Consulting says lenders are still unsure how the Trump administration's policies will play out across industries. For instance, he says companies in the renewable energy and healthcare sectors might have a tougher time, thanks in part to federal cutbacks.
And so there's just concern around the ability of some of those borrowers to repay, and that's causing the banks to think about, although not necessarily enact yet, tighter underwriting standards.
Schiff says it also depends on where you are, and there are regions of the country where demand for loans is up. Take the South, for instance.
Everything from the Atlanta metro area, going into Florida, going into North Carolina, South Carolina.
Dominic Miarton, the CEO of American Pride Bank, which serves borrowers in those states. He says the South is continuing to see in-migration and therefore economic growth.
Yep.
And with that, of course, comes demand for services, for construction, hospitality, for all kinds of other businesses that are related.
That said, the bank has been preparing for an economic slowdown. Miarton says the bank is stress testing its portfolio more rigorously, checking to see what would happen if its borrowers' incomes were to decline. And he says the strong demand he's seeing for loans is allowing the bank to become more selective.
We don't have to go geographically outside of our market, or we don't have to go into new types of industry or new types of product.
That way, Miarton says, the loans the bank does make are solid. I'm Justin Ho for Marketplace.
Our executive producer is Nancy Fargali. Our digital team includes...
I mean, yeah, the South is growing. People like it here. I mean, I don't blame them. I mean, that's me, though. I mean, that's coming from my perspective. I love warm weather. I like not dealing with snow. It's booming down here in terms of, you know, growth and building, you know, new cities effectively. I mean, a lot of these like teeny tiny towns that were, you know, almost nothing 10 years ago, or even 20 years ago, are now they're sprawling cities that remind me a lot of you know, Houston in its maturity. You know, when I lived there when I lived there growing up, you know, there's Metro Houston, and then there's just this sprawling suburbia that just goes forever and ever and ever. And I feel like that's a lot of how the South is evolving right now, which personally I don't enjoy too much. I didn't really like growing up in Houston because it was just like business. For especially, you know, I was living in the suburbs, right? There just wasn't a lot to do as a kid, as a teenager. That was outside of just like hanging out at a friend's house. I was lucky, you know, there was a bayou nearby, so I was able to go fishing. But like, there wasn't a lot of easily accessible public waterways. So it was, I didn't have a kayak, but if I had a kayak at a time, it would have been really hard to, go kayak. There wasn't really a lot of good biking trails, so I couldn't really go bike. I guess there was the bayou, but that was about it. That was accessible for someone, with just two legs to go fishing. Not a lot of good places to hike, but, it's flat land. And, like, the closest, fun place for a teenager required a car, and it was miles and miles away. So, if you're a freshman or sophomore, there's just not much to do that's, within close distance. So, I don't know. Growing up in Houston, I didn't really enjoy it, and I don't want to see this land down here become that, especially because I do love all the forest, the loblolly pines, the old oaks, all that. The Cypress Creeks. It's all lovely here. I don't want to see it go that way.
Trade, but others. But I thought it was a very constructive and positive meeting and gave us a lot to work on.
Rubio says while the baseline tariffs take effect August 1st, there are arrangements that could be made before then. He also met with officials from Korea and Japan today, trying to shore up the U.S.'s influence with its allies and partners amid Trump's tariff threats to countries around the world. More than 2,100 people are searching.
Let me strengthen my alliances with people by stabbing them in the foot and pointing a gun at them until they give me money. That's how you build strategic alliances.
Radio's Yvette Benavides reports they include a specialized crew from Mexico.
A 13-person crew composed of members from the Rescate Acuático de Protección Civil y Bomberos de Acuña, Coahuila, in coordination with Fundación 911, joined local Texas firefighters.
I only got a couple of those words.
Following the devastating
I don't know very much
flash
Spanish.
flood in the Texas Hill Country. Ismael Aldaba is the president of Fundación 911. He says that even though the team has been to many other disasters, the situation on the ground in the Hill Country is beyond what he has seen before.
It's the devastation. It's the challenge for the search. We're looking for signs of life, the cadavers. There's so much devastation. It's just amazing.
The crews are scouring a 60-mile stretch of the Guadalupe River and surrounding debris zones. For NPR News, I'm Yvette Benavides in San Antonio.
And President Trump heads to the area today to survey the damage. A Columbia University activist is suing the Trump administration for $20 million for alleged harm caused by his immigration arrest and detention. NPR's Juliana Kim reports.
Mahmoud Khalil claims he experienced lasting harm while in immigration detention. Khalil is one of the first students arrested in the Trump administration's crackdown on pro-Palestinian activists. He was detained for some 100 days before being released last month. In his filing, Khalil accused immigration agents of arresting him without probable cause and under false pretenses. He also claimed that he lost 15 pounds due to stress and inadequate food, as well as that he was forced to miss the birth of his first child. In a statement, Department of Homeland Security Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin called his claims, quote, absurd.
He was detained without a real warrant for the crime of utilizing the First Amendment. Like, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. Like, we should not be doing that to people who are protesting anything. It doesn't matter what your beliefs are. We shouldn't arrest people for their beliefs. We should arrest people for actual dangerous actions, Like, that's absolutely insane. And it really shows, like, the ideas of, like, libertarianism of, like, I'm gonna do me, and, you shouldn't hurt, you shouldn't punish people for having their own ideas, for just speaking, is, like, absolutely crazy, and it's been dropped off. And that's a libertarian idea. That's a liberal, classically liberal idea, and it's being attacked on both sides of the political establishment right now. It is absolutely unacceptable. It's why we need change. We need change in our political leaders. You can't even voice your opinion without, someone throwing you in jail effectively for 8 months, so you missed the birth of your own child, and then release you with no real charges. It's absolutely insane. We live in a police state, and it's terrifying.
U.S. futures contracts are trading lower at this hour. I'm Janine Hurst, and you're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their clients' best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
Yep.
The manuscripts, music, and notebooks of Broadway's Stephen Sondheim have recently been acquired by the Library of Congress.
I'm appreciating in a way I never had before how much effort he put into everything. You know, just page after page after page.
I'm Ari Shapiro. A look at the new Sondheim collection on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Join us for All Things Considered from 4 to 6 this afternoon on GPB. This is Morning Edition on GPB. I'm Pamela Kirkland. Thanks for starting your Friday morning with me and GPB. Coming up, a look at how China's growing presence in Africa is playing out on the ground in Ethiopia. A new PBS documentary made in Ethiopia follows 3 women whose lives are shaped by the country's largest industrial park. We'll have that story coming up in 15 minutes right here on GPB.
Remember, with your ongoing monthly support, you'll receive GPB Passport.
Yeah.
This powerful donor benefit gives you access
I need to activate my GPB Passport.
On any screen.
I just haven't ever used it. Just, you know, donate my little bit that I can, and enjoy.
Go to gpb.org/passport to find out more. And thanks.
Donate GPB. It's easy. Go online.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin.
Support it before the Senate rips it away from us.
California. In a few minutes, we'll hear from a former FEMA administrator on how proposed cutbacks to the agency could affect disaster recovery. But first, we'll check in on the latest from Central Texas, where President Trump is heading today.
It was just about this time 1 week ago that the magnitude of the flooding there began to come into focus. At least 120 people have died, and more than 170 others are listed as missing. Today, President Trump is expected to see some of the worst damage firsthand.
NPR's Frank Morris has been in Kirk County. Frank, what will the president be seeing and doing during his visit today?
He's going to have a pretty busy afternoon here. He'll be meeting with first responders.
So I'm smiling to myself because I'm just trying to I'm trying to figure out how he's going to blame this on Biden. Because that's his go-to when he, you know, doesn't have the ability to actually address this situation.
You know, I think most people directly affected by the flood have been too busy to really think about it. In Hunt, where some of the worst damage is, lots of people don't have internet. They do have a ton of immediate pressing problems. The government response has been forceful. FEMA's in town. The agency's acting director, David Richardson, has been absent. The Secretary of Homeland Security has been here, along with other federal responders. The main road along the Guadalupe River is just chock-a-block with police and fire personnel, Texas game wardens and others. Audie Fell, who lives in Hunt, says she's delighted that Trump is coming.
You know, we're grateful. We're grateful for the support he's given us, you know, along with other organizations, the governor. I feel like from what I've seen just being here, they've done an excellent job with response and help.
Of course, there have been some complaints from residents who feel the response has been spotty. That's pretty common after these disasters. It's easy for a victim to feel ignored if you personally see a first responder.
Yeah, that makes sense. Still, though, it is a major relief effort happening there. So people whose homes are damaged, how are they faring?
Well, you know, they're getting by with lots and lots of volunteers. I'm talking about hundreds of people making food, teams of volunteers searching for victims still, volunteers cutting trees, volunteers operating shovels, and volunteers running heavy equipment. Bryce Flowers from Kerrville has been out here in the heat, running a skid steer loader for 10 hours a day since the flooding, scooping up debris from people's homes. He says that hundreds of people from all over Texas and several other states are working just as hard.
We've got groups that have made contact with us that we don't even know who they are. They've been down here for 3 or 4 days. We still haven't even seen their faces. We've just communicated and directed them to the spot that needs the most help, and they've just jumped right in and gone. So it's a huge thing for people to come together, not just from our community, but from those around us.
And of course, it's a huge job ahead of them too. The destruction along miles and miles of the Guadalupe River is just breathtaking.
And for a lot of those people, I mean, they're right there in the front lines trying to clean things up and doing their best to search for bodies. I mean, the psychological toll for them has to be pretty enormous.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Volunteers are out there looking for bodies. Sometimes they find one and they're not in good shape. I saw a community leader yesterday break down just looking at the river. You see people shoveling out houses with tears in their eyes. And all the deaths, at least 36 children, primarily little girls washed away from Camp Mystic, that hits people. Alicia Strader is 8 months pregnant with a girl. And Strader says she and her husband have been in a kind of limbo.
We've been having a really hard week, kind of coming to terms with hearing the little girl's names, and then trying to be excited too about, having a baby next month.
Yeah, she says it's been really heavy for them. And of course the psychological
There's just a wreck right there.
Like this,
it just hasn't been
NPR's Frank
is that a wreck or just their car broke down? That's unfortunate.
Effort underway in Kerrville is a non-stop.
I hope they're able to get their stuff taken care of.
We've been going 24/7 since the very early morning hours of July 4th. And we haven't stopped and we haven't slowed down.
Jonathan Lamb is a spokesperson with the Kerrville Police
Not
Department.
good. They're rolling it off. That's good. That's nice of them. That's good. All right. It looks like they got people helping. That's good.
We're here helping with this effort. People coming together and just the outpouring of love and support has really been humbling.
But this all comes as the Trump administration has been criticizing FEMA for months, even suggesting they want to close it down or at least make major changes to the way it operates. We wanted to talk about that with Deanne Criswell. She served as administrator of the Federal
this is an
Emergency
important part of the
Management
story
President
as
Biden.
well of
She
this
oversaw
whole
responses to
thing.
disasters like tornadoes
It's
in
we don't do enough on the front end to prevent this damage, so it becomes a lot more expensive, and they're trying to rip everything apart to help with the back end of these disasters, which makes it even more expensive, and it just hurts people more and more and more, and it makes them disaffected with their government, which is just this death spiral.
For the FEMA administrator to get there as soon as possible. For me, I wanted to get there the next day, and often I was there within 24 hours, sometimes 48 hours, because I wanted to be able to see firsthand what the impact was, but also talk to local leaders, talk to those families, like hearing their stories so I can understand the stress and the trauma that they're going through, but also see the amount of devastation so I can make the appropriate decisions and recommendations to the president for how quickly to even enable or authorize a presidential disaster declaration. It's really hard to make those decisions when you're sitting in an office in Washington, D.C.
And what about pre-positioning resources? One of the things I think that you would do routinely is pre-position resources at the first sign of a disaster, and then you could pull them out if they weren't needed. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely, Michelle. The one thing that we want to do is not be late to need. And so the role of an emergency manager is to anticipate what the potential requests might be from a state. And so we want to move those resources in. What I would have been doing is moving resources in starting on Friday as soon as we saw how bad this was. Even before a presidential declaration, FEMA has that ability to move them. They just can't employ them until there's a declaration and until the state asks for them. But in the end, if they don't need them, then we'll just turn them around and bring them back. But it's always better to have them in place and not need them than to be behind the 8 ball and playing catch up.
President Trump has said he wants to phase out FEMA. The administration has been walking that back recently after the floods. But if FEMA were to get cut or eliminated, could states handle recovery of a major disaster like this on their own?
Probably not.
I think it's important to really look at what is happening right now. Texas is
it depends on the state, ultimately.
There are lots of resources, but they also requested resources through the state-to-state mutual aid compact. But those types of resources also get reimbursed by FEMA. If this were to happen in another state that doesn't have that much capability, it would just make it that much harder for response. But it's the recovery that's so complicated. right? During my time as administrator, I never had anybody complain to me about response. What I heard in the frustration from state directors all the time was recovery. We really need to focus our attention on how do we help streamline recovery so these communities can rebuild faster.
So I have to point out, of the the acting deputy secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Marianne Tierney, recently wrote a guest essay for the New York Times, where she said that, I quote, "The uncomfortable truth is this: with each passing day, the federal government is becoming less prepared to face the next big disaster, and as the risk grows, the ability to deliver on its vital disaster response mission is shrinking." And she resigned. Do you think that that's true? Do you agree with her?
I do think that that's true, right? I think that if you don't have the autonomy as the FEMA administrator to be able to lean forward and do the things that you know need to happen, and if you're limited by administrative hurdles, then you are just going back to the pre-Katrina days. And that's what we don't want. The reason that the changes were made after Katrina was to make sure that you had an agile agency. And again, we're spending a lot of time talking about response, but this recovery is going to be really difficult if we don't have the trained and experienced personnel to be able to support these communities.
That is the former administrator of FEMA, Deanne Criswell. Administrator, thanks so much for talking with us.
Thanks, Michelle.
Are we going to leave it there for the day? Yeah, no, I mean, this last 2 weeks have really just highlighted how, as they said, woefully unprepared our governments are, becoming, and it's more and more every year, to tackle these disasters. And it's because of a lack of organization, it's a lack of funding to allocate and move resources. It is a complete distrust of the government, and that distrust of the government really comes from the initial cost cutting. The reason these programs are not as successful as they should be is because of what's the word I'm looking for? It's because they've been just crapped on over the years because they weren't given the money in the first place to handle problems. I was a kid when Katrina hit New Orleans, right? And I remember hearing how the FEMA response was not what it was needed to be. And it was during a time of austerity, and by austerity, I mean cutting public programs for the sake of balancing the budget or whatever. And really what it was is it was cutting programs to fund the Bush era tax cuts and to fund a war, two wars in the Middle East. And it came off of the cost-cutting initiatives of the Clinton administration version of Bush Sr. and Reagan's era, honestly. But it was them too, cutting public programs, weakening these response efforts and these efforts to get ahead of problems with natural disasters, which hurts the people more. It makes them disaffected. It makes them think that the government can't do anything and that they're useless, which then empowers these, corrupt politicians to cut more and more and more until you have absolutely nothing except insurance companies ripping you off and huge real estate firms that own, thousands or millions of homes. These faceless corporations, nickel and diming you, or just driving you out entirely because you're unable to buy a new home or move, or even just rent. Really, just rent. You can't even rent a place after a disaster, or if you live in a disaster-prone area, to move out of that area to somewhere else, or somewhere safer. So it's just this isn't just a single moment in time. This is an ongoing story, an ongoing developments. Ooh. Sorry, that person just pulled out a little close to me. And it's just sad. It's just sad. I know I feel like I say it's sad every morning, at least once. But this this is something that we, the people, the citizens, especially here in Georgia, we are in a disaster-prone area. We have hurricanes, we have floods, we have tornadoes. We have just freak thunderstorms that just happen and do a lot of damage. I saw it last year. A friend of mine, he had 2 trees in his yard just fall down. It wasn't because of a tropical storm. It wasn't because of a hurricane. It wasn't because of a tornado. It was literally just a normal thunderstorm that has just become commonplace here, and it just ripped these huge oak trees out of his yard. And he was lucky it wasn't near his house. He was lucky he wasn't outside near it at the time. He was lucky no one else was over there too. So he had to get help from his community to move him out. So, like, we the people, we the citizens here in Georgia especially, we need to be the ones that lobby our legislative representatives and to get better people in to our state legislature and our county legislatures and all that, to actually have people that give a damn about protecting just normal working people who are the most likely to get destroyed by these natural disasters. So we need to fund prevention programs, fund better infrastructure, and fund emergency response efforts that help after the fact. And if we do all that, these disasters will not be as bad as they are. But it's not going to be a overnight thing. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. And it just requires us to push. So hope y'all enjoy yourselves. Enjoy your Friday. Enjoy your weekend. I'll be seeing y'all on Monday for a normal public radio. Have a good one.